going over basic shapes and breaking animals up, we're going to be using just a little bit of clay. I would take from your bag like a pretty exact amount you want to use. And I'll also go over with you guys how to store everything at the end of class. But I would take out approximately how much you want to use. I'm going to put this here. It looks kind of larger just because of where the document camera is. But I'm going to take just like a standard pen. And you could see like proportionate how big this is right next to it. All right, so it's not that much clay. We want to work like really petite with these. On our next projects, we'll work with a lot more clay. But for the little pre-tests, I like to make them just like little small kind of like figurines, kind of see where you guys are at, what you're doing. And it is more individual. When we go into formal projects, I guess I more like super guide you through them. Where this, I'm going to give you some pointers and see where you go with it. So I sketched these out super quick this morning, and I draw like super sketchy until I'm ready for something. So like these are super sketchy, but I'm going to do a woolly mammoth. I was just scribbling. And I was going to do a little scarab guy too. I started like making a sketch for that. I'm going to actually go over this one tomorrow because this is more of like a flat form. Not super flat. I'll show you what I mean by flat. And this one is more in the round, three-dimensional, where this one you would be looking at from like just the top or the side view. So I'm going to go over the little woolly mammoth that I'm going to work on today. And we're just going to go in and break it up into basic shapes. So I really just made like these little joints here. I'm going to put a lot more detail in when I sculpt it. And I'm going to show you what pieces I'm going to need. I already have one kind of prepared in here, but I'm going to go over it with you guys. What I like to do is first just take the clay that I set aside to work with and set up the approximate proportions that I'm going to need for my little miniature creature animal. So approximately the size I would need for the body in relation to the head, in relation to the legs. So that's what I'm going to do. All right. And I'm just taking chunks of clay first to do that. And like I said, I'll upload this later. If you guys just want to watch for today, that is totally fine. All right, so maybe that's body, that's head. And just like with drawing, you know, clay doesn't really look like anything until you really get going somewhere. So I'm just breaking this up. Now, when working with larger projects, usually you'll focus more on like one specific section at a time, and we'll go over that more when we do our chia pets. But for these, I want you guys to just kind of practice breaking things up into shapes. I'm going to make some little like Tootsie Roll legs. Try to get approximately the same amount of clay. And I'm just making these quick for sizing, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to actually really sculpt it. And I'm going to do that tomorrow. So, getting all my legs. And the reason I'm having you guys take out, you know, a specific amount of clay is just so they don't get like so huge. You could always grab a little extra if you need, but I want you to try to work with, you know, I guess like about the size of a, like, I don't know, like a small, like a lime or a larger clementine or something like that. Something between an orange and a clementine. That seems like about the good shape, good size amount. All right, so now I got this body. I think that's going to be my head. And I got these 4 little legs. And you're going to be like, Miss Clayton, that is a bunch of clay. So if I were to stick it together like this, clearly this is not going to work. All right, so we want to avoid this. We have basic shapes right now. I'm going to show you how to attach everything appropriately and how we are going to sculpt. How to build up some little joints, shape the feet, little things like that. So the first thing I'm going to do is for my body. And I went over this in my video this morning as well. But I want to go in and first kind of just get like a general size. I'm just really compressing the clay in between my hands and smoothing out any of these like little lines that might form in it. And kind of squishing it together. Now, you might not have to do this next step for every sculpture that you guys have. If you're unsure, I will help you individually, but I'm going to demonstrate on this just so you could see what I mean about hollowing out a form. I stuck a whole bunch of clay together. This is most likely fine. It most likely won't explode in the kiln. It's not that big of a piece. But just in case you have like a larger part for your body, I'm going to cut it in half. And I am using this, actually, here we go. I love it. Do you guys see those in there? Kabooms. Those are kabooms. That would not go well. So any clay where you take a whole bunch and just smush it together, you're going to want to cut it in half and hollow it out a little bit. I know that that's going to be making a larger hole. However, we can control that because we created it. Well, we created it knowingly. So I'm going to use this little ribbon tool and just kind of scoop some out. That's good. So just have a little hole in there. And I'm going to scoop some out of the other one. And I'm going to use these 2 little forms to actually help shape my body. I'm tapping it like that just to get a little bit more width so I could attach it to the other piece. So I have these 2 little guys. We're going to be working with pinch pots on our next project. I'm going to kind of turn these into little pinch pots almost. And I'm going to widen them up in the center where the elephant's little belly would be. Well, I don't know about little. It's an elephant. It's not an elephant. It's a woolly mammoth. I want to make a woolly mammoth. I remember going to like the Museum of Natural History and seeing the woolly mammoth displays and everything. So I'm going to go over texturing with you guys, all that stuff. Traditionally, we would slip and score this together. Because it's such a small little sculpture, I'm not going to do that. On our next project, we are though. Let me grab a little bit of extra clay. And like I said, you guys could just watch today if you want, kind of soak it in. I'm going to smush these together and I'm just going to smooth them. Now you might not have enough clay to smooth them. It might not smooth evenly. So just take some fresh clay, a little bit from your bag, kind of compress it on like that, and you can use that to smooth. And I'm going to probably work with just smoothing with my hands on these little guys for the most part. And then when I go in and add details and things like that, we'll review that. I'm going to go over making slip tomorrow in case you guys have any small little pieces that'll need to be attached. But that'll probably be more towards the end. I'm thinking basic shapes, attaching the basic shapes, sculpting it, and then adding on all the little additions. For example, I'm going to add on the ears and the tusks last. That'll be the very last thing I do. So now I have a hollow form. I will want to put an air hole in this. I'm not going to do it right now because I like to make them nice and discreet, so it's not like, oh, that project has a air hole in it. I might put it like behind one of the legs or something, and I will remind you guys before we finish them to make sure you do that. But this way we have a nice controlled space. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to decide what's going to be the front and what's going to be the back. All right? I think that I'm going to make this the front. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start pulling this together, and I'm going to create something for the head to attach to. So I'm pinching this up. And I know you guys all have different things. I'm just kind of reviewing this one for like basics, and then I'll work with you. Basics of hollowing out, attaching limbs, sculpting limbs. So I'm just kind of squeezing this. And this was my one from earlier that I have here for my body. I kind of went in and started adding some extra things onto it. And so now I got something that looks like this. It's just a little body, and it kind of looks like a tail, but we're going to use this as our place to attach the head on. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the feet. And if you see an animal in the wild, they don't just have their legs stuck on like that. All right, so we're going to make some like little hips and things like that. The first thing though I want to go in and do is I want to sculpt up all their little feet so they look similar. And a good way is just to kind of go in, really looking at your sketch and just kind of like free model them. Don't rush through it. I'm giving you guys a little extra time. But I want to like go in, get some little toes going on. And this is just going to be for my leg. Legs. And we'll go over how we're going to attach this and then how we're going to make it look like, not look like, I'm going to make a joint. I'm going to make a joint for it so it has a nice like hip. And we want to make sure, you know, we have it pretty sturdy to stand. So I'm going to say that's a starting point for one foot. And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to start to do the others. The last part I'm going to do is the head. And while you guys are sculpting, like say you're done with like your body section for the day, go ahead and wrap it up so that it's not going to dry out as you're working on the other parts. And I'm going to go over how to wrap up your projects properly and everything like that. In your kits, I gave you a board. That will be your board to kind of work on and store your projects on. I also put a sheet of plastic in there. You can honestly use any plastic to cover your project. Uh, a trash bag works. Essentially, that's kind of what the plastic I gave you was. You can use like a Target bag, a ShopRite bag, as long as it's going to fully encompass your project and holds it in and not allow any air to get in. Then we should be good. All right. So I would continue going in, sculpting these up. I'll trim them down. I'm going to put these to the side and, well, no, I'm going to keep working on these. I'm just going to get the head in like a basic shape. Just kind of squeezing it into shape. So the first step really is just getting your basic forms down. It does not have to look like it right away. And you know what? Different things work for different people. So if you're starting your sculpture and you feel really comfortable in what you're doing, that's okay as well. I find that when you're first learning how to sculpt, it is easier to like start to break things down into pieces, attach them, and then sculpt from there. However, you can also sculpt and then take things apart. And we will go over that too on our next project. But for this little guy, we're just going to start out learning this method. And then we will go into the other one. So I'm going to have all my pieces. They're not all the same size. That's okay. I'm going to adjust them tomorrow. I have my body that I'm going to start with. I'm going to add more onto it once I start sculpting to make it look, you know, heavier, more weighted. And this is going to be my basic starting spot for my head. All right? This is very, very, very simple shapes right here. This is not my elephant. This is a woolly mammoth. And this is just step one. Step one, get all your little pieces made in a very just like simple way. All right? Tomorrow I'm gonna go over starting to attach things because I don't want to throw too much at you guys at once. So basic shapes, attaching, sculpting. All right? So that'll be that for all your little pieces.